Hi everyone, this is Robert and welcome to IDG Live. This is the pre-show live stream for episode 3 of season 2 of House of the Dragon. Episodes 1 and 2 I thought were both amazing. I'm very happy and excited about them, and episode 3, from what we've seen from the trailers, is looking pretty good too. So just to get the little bits of housekeeping out of the way first, uh, spoilers. There are no show spoilers here. We'll obviously be talking about episodes 1 and 2, but we're not going to be, if there are spoilers out there, I'm certainly not going to be revealing any of them for episodes 3 and beyond. Book spoilers, however, are okay. The books have been out for a while, so obviously there are quite a lot of links between what happens in the books and what happens on the show. There are some changes as well, but proceed with caution if you wish not to be spoiled at all. That's the first thing. The second thing to say is this, like all of my live streams, pre-show live streams for House of the Dragon, this is a charity stream. If you are watching this on YouTube, if you're watching this on X, hi, good to see you as well. But if you're watching this on YouTube, then you have the opportunity to donate to an excellent cause, International Rescue, who go in to help people who are in the worst possible situations, affected by conflict, affected by natural disaster, and they go into those dangerous places and they provide, first of all, whatever immediate need is there. Do they need food? Do they need shelter, medical supplies, whatever? And secondly, they then do the longer term stuff to try and get people back up on their feet. So if you have been enjoying the show, if you've been enjoying these live streams, I'm not going to give you the hard sell on this one, but I personally would hugely appreciate it if you could be as generous as you are able. The donate button, if you're watching on YouTube, is somewhere on your screen. Hopefully it should be reasonably obvious. And thank you, by the way, to anyone who has already donated. And the previous couple of streams, I appreciate that hugely. Okay, that said, let's get into this. What I will do is a little bit of a recap on what happened in episode 2, just so that we're all in the right place. And then I've got some questions from my patrons, and I will try and pick up whatever I can in the chat as we're going through. People always ask, when is the episode airing? It is, as of now, about 4 hours, just under 4 hours time, which is 2 a.m. my local time in the UK. That's 3 in the morning for Central European time, and 9 p.m. East Coast of America time. And so a bit of a recap on where we're at. If episode 1 of season 2 was all about people's reactions to the death of Lucerys at the end of the first season, this is very much about people's reactions to the death of baby Jaehaerys in episode 1, the blood and cheese incident. So let's start by looking at Team Black over on Dragonstone. How do they react? Well, first of all, we see Rhaenyra, who's just astonished that anyone could possibly think that she could be behind this, because the rumor's already going out. She was the person who did this. And she's there. I mean, how could she? To someone like Helena, of all people, why would she wish that she was a mother who just lost children herself? Why would she put that on someone else? And you get this, I thought it was a really good and funny scene in the Black Council. Well, she's saying all of this, and then you get first Rhaenys and then Rhaenyra just turn to look at Daemon, and it's like, okay, so you're the one responsible. So Rhaenyra takes Daemon aside, and they have, I think, some of the best acting we've had in House of the Dragon so far, those two. The scene adds huge amounts to our understanding of their relationship, and also their relationship, particularly Daemon's relationship with his brother, Viserys, the old king, the previous king. So she immediately just sort of like said, how could you? And he says, it was just a mistake. And she comes to the conclusion that she doesn't believe him and she doesn't trust him. And even more importantly, she never trusted him. And the implication is she never will be able to trust him 100%. And he comes back with these accusations that actually she's not got it in her to do what he would consider to be the dirty work needed in order to actually get onto the throne and keep power once she's got it. They have this toing and froing for a time, but he protests that he was being loyal. He has always been loyal to her. He's always been trying to get people to support her claim. And she says, actually, he's always secretly wanted the throne himself. His version of history, it goes to and fro. His version of history is that actually his brother Viserys was jealous of him and was just a little bit worried. He thought that Daemon was better suited to be king, therefore he didn't want him to be king because then he would outshine his legacy. It's a completely different perspective to what we've had so far. Anyway, Daemon eventually stalks out. He goes off without a word. He passes his daughter in the corridor, doesn't even say a word to her. Rhaenyra, the implication is he is heading off, and we will obviously pick this up when thinking about this next episode. The implication is that he is going to head off and now try and win her war for her, but without her holding him back. So he's heading off. Whether we believe that as a motivation, we will have to come back to this. She is now very much of the view he has to. I think she says he has to walk his own path or go his own way or something along those lines. No idea when he's coming back. As an aside, sort of just after that, she does say to Baela, Daemon's daughter, from his second marriage, I should say. He had 3 marriages. From his second marriage, she is needed now to be patrolling above King's Landing, keeping an eye on what is going on. And that we will come back to, do not worry. That is a shift from the book, where, broadly speaking, Baela and Rhaenyra had quite a backseat during this time of the dance, but they have aged up a few of these characters. And along with that, actually, it does make quite a bit of sense that they do have a bigger role in the war, certainly in this phase of the war. So that's what happens over in sort of Team Black in Dragonstone. Daemon has now headed off. Rhaenyra is there still. Where is she going to go? She clearly is not as keen as some of her advisors on war. Heading over to Team Green, they are also being rather dysfunctional, as you would expect from Team Green. Aegon himself is just so angry. You could just see it. He smashes up his father's great big model, which, let's take a moment just to mourn the passing of that model of old Valyria. It was a magnificent prop. It has to be said, huge. You saw the size of it in the kind of the behind the scenes episodes, but also I think they were showing, as well as showing us Aegon's anger, they were showing us that he does not care about all of these things that have been left to him, all of his Valyrian ancestry. He's not been brought up. We saw this in season 1, unlike the children over in Team Black, who had been brought up to be speaking Valyrian, to be reading the Valyrian histories. He had not. He'd been brought up largely by his mother, learning the faith of the Seven and things like that. So he does not care as much. Yes, he cares about having a dragon and things like that, but he does not care so much about the Valyrian history. And I think this is just showing us that. He could have smashed up anything. The producers showed him smashing up the model of old Valyria. And when they capture Blood, they do capture both of them in the end, but when they capture Blood, Blood basically confesses to all. And that, however, doesn't help him because Aegon takes out his anger on him too. So that's Aegon. Alicent and Criston Cole are both feeling kind of guilty. The issue there is that Criston Cole, he's the new Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, but he wasn't on guard. He wasn't on duty at the time. He was inside Alicent's chamber, so to speak, and he was then not able to help out. Whether he could personally have stopped anything is one issue. Whether he should have thought to put a guard on Helena's or the children's bedchamber door, that's another issue. Either way, he feels guilty as well. However, they don't really talk about this other than the fact that she is there basically saying she is seeking absolution. She tries to talk to Helena about what Helena saw. Helena clearly doesn't want to talk about it. She tries later to talk to her father. Her father says, I don't want to hear it. And Kristen Cole just says, there is no absolution for me. He's just given up. He's not going to even try and get forgiveness now. He's going to just push through, try to survive, and just push down all these emotions that he surely must have bubbling up inside him somewhere. So they go in slightly different ways. And it's worth pointing out that not a lot of talking is going on here. If we were to say, how do you get through grief and real painful grief, then talking is actually quite important. But we see again and again and again, Alicent doesn't talk to Helena, Otto, or Helena doesn't talk to Alicent, Otto doesn't talk to Alicent. Alicent walks in on Aegon crying and she just turns around and walks away. Alicent and Kristen Cole don't talk. So there's not a lot of talking going on here. Aemond, we get actually a little bit of a clarification about what went on with Aemond. Aemond, one of the opening scenes, actually, it caused a little bit of uncertainty. People weren't entirely sure what was going on. Aemond, if you remember, he sort of goes into a room right at the beginning of the episode, picks up a coin from underneath a table, and he just kind of stares at it. And I think a lot of people are wondering, is there some significance to this coin? Is this a special kind of coin we should be aware of? And no, this was, if you remember back to what he had been doing, he had been chatting away to Kristen Cole earlier in the night. They'd had this map and they'd been sort of doing troop movements around with the coins being different armies and the like, moving them on this map. It was them, those coins there. When we saw Blood enter those chambers, grab a fistful of coins off the table and take them with him, he didn't take all of them. But what that showed us was that Aemond realized that Blood had come into his chamber and had just stolen the coins. He then concludes, along with the confession we got later from Blood, he was the target. Now, we see him later in the episode there down in Flea Bottom with his lover, and I say lover, he doesn't. It seems to be more kind of confessional, talking comfort that he seems to be getting from her there. But what he says is basically that he doesn't actually feel that guilty. He wasn't there. He came out to see her later that night, so Blood and Cheese would never have found him. So that was the first sort of revelation. But he doesn't feel guilty about that. In fact, he feels quite proud. And the reason he feels quite proud is that he thinks this means that he's been targeted by Daemon. And remember, he could put it this way, but he kind of hero worships Daemon Targaryen. And the links between the two of them are very strong. I'm going to do a video at some point about Aemond and showing the links across to Daemon. But if you think about it, they're both younger brothers to kings. They're both slightly more charismatic. They're both riding some of the most fearsome dragons, and they turn into the most impressive parts of the fighting force on each other's on the opposing sides within the Dance of the Dragons. So there's a lot of kind of links going on here, and their names, obviously, George R. R. Martin, perhaps not very subtly, Aemond is Daemon, but with the D put to the end of the name. The links are clear. Aemond sees this as Daemon recognizing an equal and rival. We know that actually he only said Aemond because that's the name that Rhaenyra said that she wanted. So it wasn't actually Daemon targeting him, but now Aemond thinks he now thinks that there's this great rivalry going on, and there isn't. So that's where Aemond is. Otto is probably the person who takes it. I mean, he's got the coolest head there. It's also probably the most callous response to all of this, in that his first thought appears to be, how how can we not let this crisis go to waste? How can we make best use of this? And his thought is what we see, is that if they can pin the blame on this for Rhaenyra, this is going to be a huge propaganda victory for them, because they already know that um, Aegon, yes, he's in King's Landing, yes, he's got all of these tokens of legitimacy, the Sword Blackfire, the Iron Throne, etc., but he doesn't. People don't think of him as a strong king yet. He still seems quite weak, because even at his own coronation, a dragon burst up out of the floor. And clearly this could be seen as a bad omen, and very much that he wasn't in control of events. So Otto thinks, let's parade the dead body, the grieving mother and grandmother. People will come over to our side, and it works. It does work. You see that this procession as it goes along. Yes, we get other things we could pick up on. Clearly, Helena hates every second of it. She has what in behind the scenes episodes they called a panic attack. Um, the cart gets stuck. So lots kind of goes on. But the main point is, by the end of that, the people are crying out, death to Rhaenyra the monstrous and things like this. A huge propaganda coup. They now think Aegon might not be a great king, but she's a child killer. So, big win for Aegon with the small folk, until he carries on with his anger spree. And Blood had told him that his accomplice was a rat catcher, so his thought was, I'll kill all the rat catchers then, which he does. And one of them is indeed Cheese. He doesn't know that, but one of them is indeed Cheese. Now, this is horrific. There were on the show, you could see a few of them hanging there. In the book, they clarify there were 100 rat catchers. Now, 100 rat catchers, that's a lot of other halves. That's a lot of grieving mothers and fathers and children and brothers and sisters and friends. That's a huge amount of people, and everyone would have seen it and known that these were innocent people. And so the whole propaganda coup that Otto won, lost in an instant. So suddenly the people, they probably still think that Rhaenyra is pretty horrible, but they also think that Aegon's pretty horrible. So all sides are starting to lose the goodwill of the small folk, which is a big theme. We will talk about this in a bit, because this is a big theme in this episode. The attitude of the 1%, the Targaryens and their inner household, to the small folk, and how the small folk are reacting to that. So that's quite a massive theme that's going on. What follows from this, though, is Otto's epic rant. Carl saying, I thought Robert just said in deep cheese. Did I? It's possible. I sometimes go off on these little mini rants, and I have no idea what I'm saying half the time. But anyway, so Otto's mini rant at Aegon. So, having discovered about the rat catchers, he then lets rip at him, calls him all kinds of things, feckless, insolent pup, idiot, fool. You can tell this has all been building up for quite some time for Otto. And then Aegon reveals the other thing that's been going on behind the scenes, which is Criston Cole giving a mission to Alec Cargill. Now, we already talked about the fact that Criston Cole was not looking for absolution. He was not looking for being made right. He wasn't looking to confess, but he is looking for a way through this. And he does still seem to have a lot of anger in him directed at Rhaenyra. And he also is very aware that questions are starting to be asked of him as Lord Commander about why wasn't that room guarded and where were you? So he decides to pick on Arik, and there's a bit of fantastic. It was quite straightforward, but it was, I thought, very good um, symbolism. Where the first thing that he picks on Arik is about his white cloak, and he basically says, um, "Your cloak's dirty, and that is bringing shame on the white cloaks." And Arik quite rightly says it's only dirty because I've literally just come back from doing my duty, defending the royal family outside. And Kristen Cole very obviously has a very white cloak, looks clean and bright and beautiful, and that's because he has not been doing his duty. So immediately we get this little bit of symbolism. Arik, all credit to him, does not rise to the bait and walks away. But when he starts being accused of it being his fault that Prince Jaehaerys died, that's the moment at which he can't really hold back. And when he pushes it back to Kristen Cole, well, what about you? Because Arik's got he's got a very fair. Why weren't you guarding Prince Jaehaerys? Well, I was guarding the king. What about you? Uh, that's the point at which Kristen Cole launches his "You shamed the King's Guard, you have to make this up." How are you going to do that? Well, you have to go on this mission to kill Rhaenyra on Dragonstone on his own. Now, Aegon says that this is, I think he says it's genius or brilliant or something along those lines. It perhaps isn't quite that good, but it is probably a better plan than what happened with Blood and Cheese, who clearly weren't the most professional of assassins and didn't even know exactly where they were when they didn't know their way around the area that they were going to be doing their murder in. They didn't know what the daily routines of everyone are, which is different, incidentally, to the book, where they did seem a lot more professional. But here, with Arik, this works a whole lot better. It does leave you wondering what would have happened if, say, Daemon had decided to do it the other way around, had decided to try and get Eric getting into the Red Keep, pretending to be Arik. Who knows? But we get him sent off, and when Otto hears, it's just like, oh, his head goes into his hands effectively, and he thinks, this is it. We can't now. This is now going to be so personal. You can't get away now from the fact that this is descended into really horrific civil war. Now, Otto's an interesting character because obviously he was behind a huge amount of what happened, but at the same time, he did seem to think that he could manage the transition. He could manage the transition to the new king through managing Aegon. And it suddenly becomes clear that he cannot manage Aegon. He could not manage what happened with the rat catchers. He could not manage the sending the Arik over to Dragonstone. Aegon was just doing his own thing. And Otto, who'd spent most of his time, his previous a couple of decades serving Viserys, who largely left things to Otto to do. This is a huge change for him. So we've got a very conflicted character here in Otto, who suddenly thinks, he doesn't say it like this, but he does think, I messed up, to the extent where he even sort of says, maybe it would have been better if Viserys had never died. He's in his mind going all the way back and thinking, maybe it wouldn't have been good if all these things happened. So Otto, complex character. I think we will get more from him. But anyway, Aegon, after he goes on this rant, I think understandably, from his perspective, he takes the Hand of the King badge from him. That bit you can understand. You want your Hand of the King to be speaking truth unto power, obviously, but if he's just spent 5 minutes hurling abuse at you, then maybe you want to have your own person in. His choice of Kristen Cole, though, is perhaps not the wisest. And again, Otto is just kind of burying. He knows what's going to happen. With Kristen Cole in charge, they're just going to start going on the offensive. And all of his best laid plans, sending out letters to different people, trying to get them on side, all of that is going to be left to the wayside. So then we get the final bit where we have Eric going in to Dragonstone, the assassination attempt, and it works really well. It has to be said. It gets right to the very end. He manages to just sort of walk up brazenly, and people open doors for him. He sees his brother wandering around without his helmet on, so he takes his helmet off just to fit in. He walks over, relieves the Kingsguard on the entrance to the bedchamber, so it's just him there. He does it all right, and then he goes in. Probably the only thing that he gets wrong is he shouts out and draws his sword far away, the other side of the room from Rhaenyra. If he'd just walked straight up to her, then I suspect the damage would have been done. But his brother bursts in just at that moment. How did he know? Well, we're not told exactly in the episode, but the very, very strong implication is that this was Messalina. Messalina had a conversation with Rhaenyra, and Rhaenyra had basically said, okay, you're free to go. If Daemon promised you your freedom for doing what you did, for telling him the names of Blood and Cheese, then I will honor that, and you are free to go. Messalina, on her way out, saw Eric come in. She'd just seen him inside, so she knows that's not him. Figured out what's going on, which immediately tells us she's both observant and smart, and almost certainly she was the person who raised the alarm. The fight itself between Eric and Eric is deliberately confusing. The way it was in the books, we're told nobody knew whose side, which one was which, and that was the experience of both people in the show, and also most viewers. I mean, I'll happily admit that the first time I watched it, I wasn't 100% sure by the end who was who. It does seem on second, third viewing pretty clear that it is Eric. That's Rhaenyra's sworn shield. It's him who prevails. But then he obviously ends his own life because he cannot bear to carry on knowing that he's just killed his brother. It's all horrendously tragic. And I think that for me, that works really well. These were characters that we knew quite well, but not very well. And yet there was a level of kind of emotional engagement going on there that I thought was really quite masterly. I was expecting the Blood and Cheese at the end of episode 1 to be the thing which really hit home with me, but it was this, probably even more than that. Okay, let's that's a sort of overview of the episode. We will pick up on as many of those different things as we can going through. I've got some questions from my patrons, which I will get to. If you have, I saw a few people did donate to the charity International Rescue. Thank you very much. I hugely appreciate that. I saw them as they were going through. Didn't get a chance to read them all out, but thank you. Let's have a quick check in the chat. And Jack Wolf saying, I think they may be holding off on the dragons for a while, but then when they show them, it'll be really good. So they're just in terms of introducing the dragons, they have been quite careful. They are very aware that not only for the casual viewer, not only are there lots of Targaryens that look kind of similar and have similar kind of names, the dragons are equally confusing for most viewers, so they won't know exactly who is Caraxes, Ryder, etc., etc. So adding in new dragons is something they're trying to do relatively slowly, but we will get quite a few more this season. Dan Data saying, please, please, please bring Sunfire today. We are going to have Sunfire at some point this season, confirmed. We've seen that in one of the trailers. A couple of people talk about Sunfire, actually. Sunfire, for those who don't know, so Sunfire is Aegon's dragon and is recognized as being the most beautiful dragon possibly ever, certainly in that time of the Targaryens in Westeros. And so strong was this link between Sunfire the dragon and Aegon that you'll see the banners start appearing for Aegon, and it's the green background with a golden dragon on, not a red dragon or a black dragon. This is a golden dragon because his dragon is Sunfire, and that's how closely he is associated with his dragon. So, although we've not seen the dragon yet, this is really important in understanding Aegon. Okay, let's go to Cannibal Dragon saying, have you seen Crowfeed's daughter's video on the twins fight? I have not, but I did see that Amanda, excellent YouTuber working on A Song of Ice and Fire and particularly House of the Dragon, I think at the moment is fantastic. I think I saw her in the chat a little bit earlier. Hi, Amanda. Good to see you. And I'm absolutely sure that the video will have been great. Northern Tommy asking if the backdrop image is from the upcoming episode. Yeah, it's from the trailer for the upcoming episode. They release a few images as well. Was it from the trailer? I think it was from one of the images. If you check out a few days before the episode airs, they release a few sort of high quality images, which is great for creating thumbnails and the like, I have to say. And this is one of those images. Let's go to Andrew Kay in the chat just picking up saying Kristen Cole is too tunnel visioned and even reckless in how he operates to be a competent hand. Yes, and that is the key point here. I think that this shows there is a shift in how Team Green will operate. Both sides have actually held back from all-out war now for 3 episodes. We've had a few little kind of things here and there, assassination attempts, accidental death by dragon, that kind of thing. But in terms of actual war, neither side's really pulled the trigger yet. And they're for different reasons. While on Team Black, it's Rhaenyra who's kind of holding this all back. If she'd immediately turned around and said, war now, we'd have had war straight away. Team Green are just disagreeing with each other and they're just not getting on, and there is no clear direction that they're heading in. So what we have now is the removal of Otto from power. Aegon and Kristen Cole will form a very strong axis and being proactive in their war, along with Aemond, I suspect. Ranabe Mitra saying, salutations, Robert and Dan the dog. I hope you're doing well. Yes, thank you very much. Today we'll be seeing the Battle of the Burning Mill, so I had 2 questions to ask. Do you think the showrunners will use Willem Blackwood and Gerald Bracken's names from Season 1, Episode 4 as connective tissue to scenes we're about to see in this episode? Fire and Blood has a lot of unnamed Blackwood and Bracken lords during this segment of the text, and it would make sense to me if we reuse the above names from Season 1. What do you think? Yeah, so this is an interesting one. So we've seen, again, from the trailers, it seems pretty clear we've got the Brackens and the Blackwoods, which we should have at this stage in the Dance of the Dragons. The first meaningful actual battles happened in the Riverlands, particularly between the Blackwoods and the Brackens. Now, what you've got, the situation there, the Riverlands are mentioned a few times. They've been mentioned a few times already. Daemon was itching to get to Harrenhal, which is in the Riverlands. And there's mentions of the Tullys. House Tully they are the Lords Paramount of the Riverlands. They're the people that everybody should be following. However, there's a lot of other powerful Riverlands houses who think that the Tullys shouldn't have been made Lords Paramount. They're not as old a house, they're not as famous a house, they're not as storied, they're not as rich, their lands aren't as great. There are other houses with greater castles. The Tullys were made Lords Paramount by Aegon the Conqueror simply because they were basically the first people to bend the knee, and he wanted somebody he knew he could trust. So he went with that rather than who is the next most powerful house in the Riverlands. So we're left with that general situation, and then we also have Lord Tully at the moment is very old and dithering a lot and not really wanting to do things. His grandsons even, they are wanting to get on with things, wanting to join this war. They are wanting to join it on Team Black. He is wanting to join on Team Green, but they cannot really agree. And so House Tully are just not doing much at this stage, which means that the other Riverlands houses can get away with doing what they want, and they can declare for who they wish to declare for. So in the book, what we have House Blackwood declaring for Team Black, which kind of fits in with the fact that they're a First Men family. There's a lots of links across the Weirwood network, and you will see a lot of the other houses that have connections with Team Black, like the Starks and a lot of the North, also have this kind of background as well. House Bracken declare for Team Green. And we get a couple of battles, the Battle of the Burning Mill and Stony Hedge, which, broadly speaking, the Blackwoods come out on top. So we've seen from the trailers this is what's going to be happening. This will start to build up to Harrenhal being the third major focus of this story. I think probably for the rest of the season, going into the next season as well. We've got Dragonstone, we've got King's Landing, and Harrenhal. So those are going to be the three main bases that we're looking at here. Will they try and link this back to the episode back in the first half of season 1 where we get Rhaenyra, who's out? She's been told that she can choose a husband at this point in time, and you'll remember that she's there with this line of suitors coming in. A couple of them get into an argument. It's a Blackwood and a Bracken, and a fight ensues, at which point Rhaenyra just gets out of there. So will we try and go back to that? I mean, I think that for a casual viewer, that's quite a long time ago to remember specific names. House Blackwood and House Bracken, I think that they will emphasize. Whether they will go for specific names at this stage, I think what we should be looking at more with House Blackwood is the point at which people like Ali Blackwood start getting mentioned, because she's going to be a very important character towards the end of the Dance of the Dragons. Secondly, you're asking about a trailer, one of the trailers that Daemon is sitting on Caraxes and says, "Denounce the usurper's claim or your house burns." Do you think this is the Brackens at Stonehenge before taking over Harrenhal, or later episodes after he takes over Harrenhal? So he should take over Harrenhal. I think what we're going to see, we see also a big army when what looks like the Riverlands. I think we're going to see Daemon amassing an army. And as a part of that amassing an army, we're going to see he will be having to go to places in the Riverlands and demanding that they come over to his side, that they bend to the knee, basically. So that's the clear. I mean, there's a hint here when he's talking about denouncing the usurper's claim. Clearly, Aegon is the usurper, but who is he thinking that is usurping from? Presumably, this is Rhaenyra. But again, we've got this little wondering in the back of our head. Rhaenyra accused him of wanting to be king himself. Is that the case? We'll have to wait and see. Gina Z saying, was Darren mentioned during season 1? He said, I've always said Darren. I think in this episode 2, he was mentioned. He was called Darren. So let's see how they decide to go with it. Was this the first reference? Do you think they should have laid a bit of groundwork for this character in season 1? So, if you do not know who this character is, it's absolutely fine. Because he wasn't mentioned in season 1, and this was indeed the first mention we've got. This is the 4th child of Alicent and Viserys. So we know we've got Aegon, we've got Aemond, we've got Helaena. They had a 4th child, Darren. Now, he was sent down to Old Town to be a squire. Now, Old Town is the base of House Hightower. This is entirely normal practice. This is the same as it was in the book. However, the difference is that they didn't mention this at all during the episode 1 long move through time. They never sort of mentioned that there was another child. I don't mind this, just as a general principle, and the same principle with the introducing the dragons slowly, introducing Targaryens slowly also works fine for me. Darren isn't important to this story until we get to a little bit later on, when an army starts coming from Old Town, from the Reach, and starts heading up towards King's Landing with a dragon and Prince Darren. That's the point at which he suddenly becomes incredibly important. While he's just down there being a squire, it doesn't make huge amounts of difference. The only difference it makes is the fact that there is a dragon there, which kind of, I mean, it's a young dragon, but it kind of tips the scales a little bit more towards Team Green, which when it comes to dragon battles, at the moment you'd have to say Team Black do have a bit of an advantage. Obviously, Team Green have got Vhagar, the biggest and fiercest dragon of them all, but there are a lot of, particularly once you've aged up a few of these dragon riders like Baela, you've got a lot more dragons over there on Team Green. So I'm okay with the fact they didn't really mention him before, as long as in this season we start getting the build up to this idea, which it seems like they might be planting the seeds for this now already. We start getting the build up to this idea that this isn't just Team Green, isn't just what's going on in King's Landing. There is more. They've got armies. There was talk of an army, a Lannister army as well. So we've got 2 big armies and another dragon heading eastwards from their strongholds. So that's where I think we will see. It would not surprise me if it's some point in season 3. The interesting thing is that when Ryan Coogler, the showrunner, was asked about this, he said, "We don't have a POV character down in Old Town." It's an interesting turn of phrase, because obviously the books, the Main of Song of Ice and Fire books, are written in POV characters, but TV shows can be a little bit more open about whose perspective we see things from. But I think the implication is that he wants to have a main character down there before before we're seeing something. We are going to have a main character, from the sounds of it, Otto Hightower, who's going to be heading down. This is where he says he's going to go next. He's going to head down back to the Reach, first to talk to House Tyrell, it would appear, but that's just around the corner, really, from Old Town. So I think, given the fact they've got Rhys Ifans, who are, particularly in this episode, actual hat tip to Rhys Ifans, who plays Otto Hightower, amazing performance in this episode. I thought it was really, really good. I think that they're probably going to get him doing a little bit more work. And in the book, at this point, he kind of starts to go into the background a little bit. Here, if they take him down and he becomes a part of advising Prince Darren as he is part of this army heading up, I think that would work quite well. Joe Magician in the chat. Hi there, Matt. Great to see you. For those who don't know Joe Magician is also another excellent, I was going to say Game of Thrones YouTuber. a Song of Ice and Fire YouTuber, also covering House of the Dragon in depth. And I have got a question a bit later about one of your pet theories about Larys being a Greenseer, which I'm probably not going to do justice to. So feel free to drop into the chat the key points about why Larys definitely is a Greenseer, and then I will read them out. But Matt's done lots of videos on that. Do go, and I'm sure somebody in the chat will put a link across to those videos and to Joe Magician's channel. Let's go to a question from Rassler saying, good day, Robert. Hope you and Dan the dog are well. We are, thank you. Like you, I anticipated a spy war this season, but was surprised to see Messalina appear to give up quite so easily. I wouldn't have thought the simple burning down of her pleasure house would be enough for her to have lost all her power and influence. Do you think that there were other things going on, or was the destruction of a house really all it took? So this appears to be, I mean, for those who don't know what I meant by the spy war, I did a video, I think it was right after season 1, where I basically said that I could see there being a spy war between Larys, who was basically heading up for Team Green, or Team Alicent at the time, their spy network, and her with her spy network, which we know in time will gravitate towards Team Black and Rhaenyra. She will become Rhaenyra's Mistress of Whisperers. So that's what we know, and I thought that we would probably see some kind of a spy war. And so yeah, I was as surprised as you were when she seemed to be kind of just giving up and leaving. We will see more of her, so it wasn't just that, but what from the language that she was using in the conversation with Rhaenyra, it was very clear that this was a matter of her realizing, well, thinking that what she could do was build a new life for herself and be useful, a part of this 1% club, be useful to them, and they would want to. But it turns out actually they could just cast her aside, and so she wanted no more of it. So that was it. It was a psychological reason. She could have, she was resourceful, she's intelligent, she could have started again, but it's not. So that's not the issue. The issue is the fact that what she was trying to do, she realized that was the wrong goal in life. Joe Magician in the chat, having been asked slash challenged by me to put into the chat the reasons why Larys is a Green Seer. Number one reason is that he is, which is very helpful. Thank you very much. I will very happily just send people over to Matt's video to go and look on that one. Rassler also asking, do you think Daemon's plan to attack Vhagar with Rhaenys was actually quite a smart move? Based on how things play out, it seems this actually might have been the best chance to take Vhagar out early. With Vhagar already patrolling the skies of King's Landing, it's highly possible they could have attacked Aemond before Aegon could have mounted Sunfire and been able to reinforce. And we don't know if Helena would have used Dreamfire. Yeah, so this is it a good idea? I mean, it's quite high risk because Vhagar is hugely powerful, hugely fierce. But with those two dragons, I think, yeah, they possibly could have done. This is what we have. This is relating to a later battle, the Battle of Rook's Rest, where we have Meleys, that's Rhaenys is the dragon, and we hear this about Meleys versus Vhagar, and we hear it said against Vhagar alone, Meleys, Rhaenys might have had some chance, which seems to imply that if there were two dragons, and Daemon on Caraxes seems to be an incredibly competent and certainly used to war, kind of rider and dragon combo, I think that there's a good chance that they perhaps could have. One of them would probably have been killed, but probably they would have taken him down. I think that the risk is that how do you actually get Vhagar on its own? Could you do that, as you say, before you suddenly got Sunfire coming out? I think they could probably reasonably guess that Helena on Dreamfire wouldn't come out, but Sunfire perhaps could. So it was risky, but it was possible. It was one of those ways that you could perhaps have ended that threat straight away. So Joe Magician, just sorry, I will go on to this. I'll see whether I can find the question about Larys Strong. Yes, this is from Stephanie B, saying, "Greetings and salutations. It is posited that, by wise and wonderful people, that Larys is a greenseer, and he allowed Blood and Cheese to go about their business. Do you think he's using his skills to create chaos, or does he have a goal in mind? As always, thank you for the magnificent content, and shout out to the mods." So, moderators, this is your early shout out. If you are here watching this live, then the reason you're having such a great time in the chat, and it's a safe place for debate about things we love, is because the moderators do wonderful, wonderful work. So if you are there, could you please show them a little bit of love? So before answering the substance of that question about whether or not Larys might have been actually actively allowing Blood and Cheese to do their thing, this idea that Larys is a greenseer, where's that coming from? So what Joe Magician's got, and well, I'll start with the sort of the background bit, which is that he is from House Strong. House Strong are, we're pretty sure, a First Men house, which you need to be pretty much to be a greenseer. He comes from Harrenhal. Harrenhal is on the shore of the God's Eye Lake. In the middle of the God's Eye Lake is the Isle of Faces, which we're pretty certain is certainly very central to the Weirwood network, perhaps even the central hub of the Weirwood network. So there's all of that going on. And he does seem to have a lot of books as well as show. He does seem to have a lot of information. So where's he getting this from? And Joe Magician's adding, there's a lot of on-screen stuff, puzzles to solve, hints, odd things going on around him, stuff he shouldn't know, but the core of it is that Condal loves magic. So that I think is a really important point. He does, and there's also in the thing which worked best for me in terms of on-screen hinting was there's an early conversation between Larys and Alicent, which you may remember. They're there in the Godswood with the Weirwood tree, and he is speaking to her, and on a few of the shots that we have, we hear his voice, but we don't see his face. We just see the face of the Weirwood tree, which is suggestive. It's not conclusive, but it is suggestive. As for whether Larys allowed Blood and Cheese to go about their business, I think there's a very human answer here, which is to say that he actually is only relatively recently having set up his informants network. So the idea that he already knows absolutely everything that's going on seems to be a little premature. Added to which he went in episode 1 to try and reassure Alicent, I've been hunting down all of the people who we can't trust, and we've been replacing them. If he had been saying that, which he did, and then immediately there's somebody's just actually come in and snuck in that we didn't know, who was in the employ of the Red Keep, has come in, that would cast a little bit of suspicion at him. So that seems, from a very human level, that seems unlikely. There is one thing that I do drop in every now and then, which I think is under-analysed in the Fire and Blood / House of the Dragon community, which is an almost throwaway line in Fire and Blood that is this. This is talking about Prince Daemon. And it said, the prince still had friends in the low places of King's Landing, which we know about, and followers amongst the Gold Cloaks, which we know about. Unbeknownst to King Aegon, the Hand, or the Queen Dowager, he had allies at court as well, even on the Green Council. Now, the book doesn't go on and explain who on the Green Council are there, who was his ally on or who were his allies on the Green Council, because you can quickly go through the characters on the Green Council and say, well, it's clearly not Otto, it's clearly not Alicent. Do we think that he's allies with the Maesters? Doesn't seem likely. Kristen Cole? No. So you can start immediately crossing people off of this list of who might be his allies. And who are you left with? Well, there's not many people, one of whom is Larys Strong. So given how the Fire and Blood is very vague and deliberately vague on what his motivations were, and even sort of saying, no, he took all his secrets to the death. We'll never know whose side he really was on. It's indicative. It's not evidence, but it's quite indicative that we should consider him potentially playing both sides in this. Andrew K saying, asking, do you think House of the Dragon will show the Battle of the Honeywine to feature Deeren in action, or hold that back until later? Surely some battles will be cut, I think. Yeah, so I think they're not going to show every single battle, purely for budgetary reasons, I suspect. They will not show every single battle in The Dance of the Dragons. What they will show is the important ones, or what they will focus on is the important ones. So we will have to have some establishing point for Deeren. Now, in terms of the way they've structured House of the Dragon, is that they have tried to show arcs, and this is standard stuff, obviously, but they try and show character arcs from sort of beginning to end, rather than just sort of. It was quite a rarity to have let's drop in Cregan Stark and then just forget him for the rest of the season. That's not where they normally go. Normally, when they introduce something, a concept or a character, it's because they want us then to be following that through for the rest of the season. So Deeren season 3, and they will show stuff there, which means that they could time shift a few things so that works a little bit better. James Aaron saying Robert is starting to look a bit like Marcus Aurelius as his hair gets shaggier. Well, it does need a haircut, I have to say. I know that having the longer hair, some people seem to think it looks better. It reaches this level and it just gets a little bit too much for me, particularly in the summer. But yeah, Marcus Aurelius, I'll take a Marcus Aurelius. That's not too bad. Let's go to question from George R.R. Tolkien saying, salutations, Robert. Salutations to you too. In episode 2, they show Aemond in the brothel with that older lady. Do you think this is them setting up and foreshadowing for Alys Rivers later on? I also wanted to ask you about the preview of the next episode showing Daemon going a little killing spree in the rain. Where is he and what do you think he is doing? Well, that second one, I've got other questions about this, so I'll just quickly round it off. It's if you look at the preview trailer, it's very clear we see Caraxes landing at Harrenhal. Daemon's basically said he's going to Harrenhal, so that's what's going on there. In terms of the first bit, Aemond with, as you say, that older lady. Is this foreshadowing? Pardon me. Is this foreshadowing Alys Rivers? So Alys Rivers, we will come across. She is a fantastic character. I really do have to do a video on her at some point. She is a fantastic character who is, her name implies, bastard born. She is based at Harrenhal, and she is almost certainly a magic-y type person. Fire and Blood gives her a very bad write-up. I've got a description. I've got a related question later about her. I've got a longer description, so hang around for that. But she is known to be at least 40, possibly even older than that. The Maesters sort of mutter about maybe she uses dark magical arts to keep her youth and beauty, but she is an older woman. And Aemond in the book does end up with her by his side. Is this foreshadowing that? I think so. I mean, we thought it in season one that it was already it was hinted at. That was the same. If you missed it, that the character back in episode 9, where Aemond and Kristen Cole go knocking on a brothel door, and a woman comes out and says, "Oh, hello, dear. Haven't seen you for a while." That was her. So the it was set up back in season 1, which presumably at that point they know that they were going to be bringing the actress back for season 2. But this could also, and we thought then that this could also be foreshadowing for what's going to be coming. Carl Karsnark saying Alys Rivers should be great, and we need some more non-draconic magic as well. Yeah, so she is the most magical character in this section of Targaryen history. Through Fire and Blood, they always try and downplay the Maesters. Try and downplay magic, that they say, "Oh, this wasn't magic." If it's obvious that some magic happened, then they start, because we all know the Maesters have got an agenda. Then they tend to start to say, "Oh, this was black magic. This was evil. The wrong things." So it will be interesting to see whether they show us this character as being like the Maesters portrayed her, or in a lot more sympathetic light. Experience from House of Dragon so far is they like to put people in a more sympathetic light than the book did. But yeah, some non-draconic magic. Yes, House of the Dragon is very focused in on dragony magic. And Berus Aurelius saying, "I'm so interested with how much magic we get in the show. D&D did a lot to downplay it in Game of Thrones." Yeah, it wasn't just D&D. For those who don't know, the showrunners Dan and Dave, the showrunners of Game of Thrones, it wasn't just them downplaying it, although you would agree that they did. In what is very noticeable in A Song of Ice and Fire is that book 1 is a high fantasy book written as a low fantasy book. All of the knowledgeable, wise characters that we meet, Maester Luwin, Tyrion, they don't just say, "Oh no, magic doesn't exist." They mock the idea. Tyrion mocks the idea of magic, magical creatures, things like that. Otherwise, we're supposed to think of Tyrion as actually being very clever and insightful, but he thinks this is laughable, the idea that they're magical creatures. And so in book 1, you have the prologue, very magical, the others appear. The last chapter, very magical, the dragons appear. In the middle, if you ignore like the odd random chapter like Bran getting his weirwood dreams, there's no magic. It's all very just like medievally, without magic going on. The magic ramps up as this goes along. What I will find interesting in House of the Dragon is whether they do something similar here. Do they ramp up the magic as this goes along? Because it started out, yes, we had a bit of a prophecy, but that's pretty much it. Are we actually going to see any real magic happening here? Rassler asks, saying, "It was suggested that Otto was going to Highgarden to try and get them on side, but in the books, House Tyrell sit the war out as the Lord is still an infant. How do you see the storyline playing out on the show? Will he go to other Reach Lords, or will his trip all occur off screen and be unsuccessful?" So I think we will see um, him go down to the Reach. Yes, you're absolutely right. In the book, then the Tyrells basically sat it out. What I like is the fact that they're already starting to play into this idea that they're not just doing a shortcut and saying House Lannister support Team Green, therefore all of the Westerlands must support Team Green. House Stark support Team Black, therefore all of the North must be supporting Team Black. They don't go down that. They're already trying to show us, okay, so the Riverlands things are a bit more complicated. Some houses support one side, some houses support the other. The Reach, not all of the lords down in the Reach are going to necessarily follow what the Hightowers want. So they're already trying to show us there are layers to this, which I think is fantastic, because they could have gone down the easy route and not done that. Whether this means we're going to get into the murky world of Reach politics, I love it if we go down that route. I suspect not. we may, who knows, we may get Otto Hightower talking to the Tyrells, but the Tyrells aren't a central part of this. They, as I say, they largely sat it out anyway in the book. If they do get involved, we're not going to be seeing them heading up any armies. It's going to be the Hightowers who do that. So maybe we'll have a little nod to it. Auntie Slayer saying, "Hi, Robert. I was talking to my sister-in-law, who's a show-only fan, yesterday. Who is a show only fan. I was talking yesterday to my sister-in-law, who was a show only fan. Sorry, made it sound as if she was a show only fan yesterday, but now she's read the books, which would be fantastic. She was pondering and excited about Rhaenyra's role in the coming episodes, with war now being inevitable. This made me nervous for her and other show fans, knowing that Rhaenyra's contributions are reportedly minimal in the books during this period. How do you think Alicent and Rhaenyra are going to remain strong figures in the war efforts on this show? I doubt the show would let the strong female leads fall by the wayside after building them up so much." Well, so what they've done very clearly and strongly is two things here. The first is they've established a connection between Rhaenyra and Alicent. That was deliberate on their part. That isn't, and when I say a positive connection between them, they were friends. That isn't the case in the book. In the book, there's a 9-year gap between them, and that was a significant gap when they're growing up, because Alicent was 18 when she married Viserys, Rhaenyra's father, and she was 9. So they weren't best friends before then, but this then just got a bit awkward because one of them married the other's dad. It was a completely different dynamic from the start, and it's sort of just descended from being, well, we'll get on and we'll make this work with me and my new stepmom, to actually this is awkward, to what we saw. So that's the first thing, was they deliberately created the connection between the two of them. The second thing that they've done is that they've deliberately made each of them be the consciences of the two sides, at a kind of a high level. So we've already seen that Daemon, over on Team Black, Daemon has been desperately trying to go to war for a very long time. We've seen a lot of other characters, like Corlys was quite early on. He was very much wanting, his people to be on the throne. You've seen around the Black Council a lot of strong advice that Rhaenyra is holding back. She's being the conscience. She doesn't want to go to war unless she absolutely has to. And Alicent, she started a lot of this by telling everybody that Viserys changed his mind on his deathbed, but she does seem to be having these regrets, and she does seem to be wanting to confess her sins. She is wanting absolution in some way. So they're both this kind of conscience that will come back. They in the books they meet again, and I think that we will be seeing this continually through their eyes, as the guys around them are waging war, and they are trying desperately to, if they can't stop it, then rein it in somehow. John Buxton saying, "Very interested to see how the different narratives start to tell the story through the differing environments." Yeah, absolutely, I agree with that completely. The different environments, when we get Harrenhal, I think that will shift a lot, because thus far we've basically just had, people dotted about in other places, but basically we've just had 2 centers of power. Now we're going to have the third, so we're going to have this kind of triangle of places, and that is going to be who's in charge of it now, and what does the feel of that place, which what we've already seen from the trailer is moody, it's mysterious, it's very wet, it's dark, and that will, and with a magic user there, that will be the spooky center of the House of the Dragon. I'm absolutely convinced of it. Question from Bradders Bradley. Great name. Evening, Robert. During the dance, isn't there a time when King's Landing is in anarchy and has multiple petty kings? I could be wrong or think of the wrong period, but if it is so, has there been any foreshadowing so far? And when would we expect to see more? Well, you're right. And as I said at the beginning, spoilers here from the books. I assume they're going to go down this route in the show, but we do not know. Yes, once Team Green have been kicked out from King's Landing, Team Black take over, then Team Black get kicked out of King's Landing, and the whole thing just descends. The storming of the Dragon Pit by the people of King's Landing is the final straw. And after Rhaenyra has gone, basically there's a power vacuum. And what you find is that it's called the Moon of the Three Kings. You get each of the three hills in King's Landing gets a different ruler, so to speak, and they for 1 month they rule until people start coming in. The Baratheons decide rather belatedly to join the war, and then eventually we have the Hour of the Wolf with the Starks making their way on, Cregan Stark coming all the way down south. So, yes, there is a time of just anarchy in King's Landing. Will we see this start? When will we see the build up to this? We are already seeing the build up to this. We have had it in drips in season one. We get random things from Daemon saying to Rhaenyra when they're heading down into, quite early on in season one, they head down into that sordid evening they have in Flea Bottom, and he says something like, "It's really good to understand the small folk and what they believe in and things like that." And Rhaenyra's there. Why do I need to care? And he says, "Well, when you rule, you need to be able to understand what the people are thinking and feeling." And so immediately we've got this, okay, foreshadowing. Then we get the character of Messalina, who's been set up very strongly to be standing up for the small folk, for the people of King's Landing. She's there. Her price for finding Aegon, the new king of the Seven Kingdoms, her price for that, she could have asked for anything. And she asked for the ending of children being forced to fight in fighting pits. She is there on the side of, in this version of Messalina, is there on the side of the small folk. And of course, the Red Keep is not going to keep their promise there. So she will be being betrayed, and I think everybody knew that right from the very beginning. But in this episode that we've had, the messages get stronger and stronger. We get 4, 5 different mentions of the small folk. We get and I didn't actually mention it when I was doing my summary, but we got Hugh Hammer there, and it turns out Hugh Hammer, he's got a family, he's got a child, it would appear, who is ill, and food starting to run out. And he's like, "It's okay. The king's promised me that's going to have better payment conditions." And the question is, but nothing's happened yet. So already we're starting to see cracks appearing there. We've got what's going on with the rat catchers hanging there, and people are looking, and they're going to start turning on Aegon. We've got the march through the town, the funeral procession, people starting to turn on Rhaenyra. Drip, drip, drip. This is what we're seeing in this episode again and again and again, what the small folk think and feel. We even get Aemon's lover. She sort of says something along the lines of, when a prince gets angry, it's the small folk who suffer. Drip, drip, drip. We're getting this. This is going to happen all the way through this season. Increasingly, we're going to get these messages that the small folk are being ignored, the small folk are suffering, and at some point, they're going to start rising up. So it's probably not until the end of season 3, maybe even later, depends on how slow they go. We'll have to wait and see the speed they go through this season, the events. But over time, that is going to build and build and build until we get the key thing is when we get the introduction of this character called the Shepherd, who probably is going to appear some point in the early part of season 3, and he's going to actually start rabble rousing, getting the people on side. Julian saying, are we still doing super chats? I can't tell. On these ones, no. Super chats are available on my Thursday live streams. On this, all of my pre-show live streams this time around, they are charity streams for an excellent charity called International Rescue, who go and help people in war zones, which seems very appropriate, it has to be said, for House of the Dragon. We're here talking about this, but the small folk are still always the ones who suffer the most, the innocents in any conflict around the world. And so that's my way of trying to help out these issues in the real world. If people have got the some money, please be as generous as you are able. If you're watching live on YouTube, there is a link somewhere to that. So donations, and because this question does keep on get answered, 100% of the donation goes to the charity. I get nothing, YouTube gets nothing, YouTube pays all the transaction fees and everything as well. So 100% of what you pay goes straight to the charity. So let's go to Julian, thank you very much for the donation. Swift response, thank you. I hugely appreciate it. Konstantin Tronov saying, show Masseria is very pro-small folk. Wouldn't be tragic if she suffers the same fate as her book counterpart, dying in the hands of small folk. It absolutely would. If she's been fighting for them all this time, it would be it would be an ironic and sad fate, it has to be said. Some very generous donations coming to. Thank you very much, people. I really appreciate that. As I say, it's not for me. This is for people who need this way more than most of us do. Lord Medici saying, 7 blessings, Robert. House Hightower is, and to you too, sir. House Hightower is now amassing an army. When a great house amasses an army, it calls its banners. So the vassal houses that owe fealty to this house all arrive with their forces. House Hightower has 5 vassal houses: Beesbury, Bulwer, Costain, Kai, or Key, I don't know how to pronounce it, and Mullendore. These houses are sworn to House Hightower, which is in turn sworn to House Tyrell. I thought this was an oddity, then I found that House Hightower was not the only non-great house to have vassals of its own. House Hunt is sworn to House Tarley, etc., etc. Why is it that some vassal houses but not others have vassals of their own? Do you think that the Hightower army is more powerful by virtue of having 5 vassal houses sworn to them than houses of the Reach with similar power, such as the Tarleys and the Redwines? Okay, interesting question, which is about how this kind of pseudo-feudalistic system works. Quick sip of water. Okay, so it's like a pyramid structure, basically. You get the Targaryens at the top, the kings are at the top, and then underneath that you get your lords paramount. We know who they are: the Lannisters, the Starks, the Tullys, etc. Underneath them are the next level of house. These are the significant houses. The Hightowers are one of them, for example. We get the Boltons up in the north. We get a lot of houses that we've heard of. They owe their fealty direct to their lords paramount. But underneath them, there are also smaller houses who owe their fealty up to them. So it sort of goes down, and sometimes it can even go down another level. You will find we get references to, for example, House Manderley up in the north. House Manderley have, we're told, lots of petty lords and landed knights who owe their fealty to House Manderley. Now, those petty lords and landed knights owe their fealty to House Manderley. House Manderley owes its fealty to House Stark. House Stark owes its fealty to House Targaryen. So that's the way that this kind of goes. And what does this mean for House Hightower? Well, House Hightower has got some quite significant houses beneath them. And so as you sort of like Beesbury and Costain, for example, in particular, are old and well-known houses. So yes, this does mean that they, in and of themselves, can gather together quite a significant army. The situation with House Hightower is quite an interesting one because they may not be Lords Paramount of somewhere, but they are the oldest house in the Seven Kingdoms. They are one of the most powerful houses in the Seven Kingdoms, and they are one of the most influential because of Old Town. Now, we think of King's Landing as being the preeminent city, which it is, but King's Landing, even at this point in the story, King's Landing was only founded 130 years earlier. In the history of the Seven Kingdoms, well, in the history of Westeros, that's nothing. And it took some time for it to sort of get up to the size it is at this point in the story as well. So it's really only been in the last 50 to 100 years that King's Landing has been the size city it is. All the time previously, it's been Old Town. Old Town was the biggest city, the richest place, the most significant place in all of Westeros. And House Hightower ruled Old Town, which meant that House Hightower, as long as they stayed there, they didn't really care that much about being Lords Paramount, about being even kings all that much. They seemed quite happy to be ruled over technically by the gardeners. Then they had the maesters were based there. They had the Faith of the Seven, which the Starry Sept is the big sept. The Great Sept only appears in King's Landing much later. The Faith is based down in Old Town. The Maesters are based down in Old Town. Old Town was the centre of sort of cultural life in Westeros. So it is um, as a house, it is able to summon up a huge, even if House Tyrell was sort of standing to one side, it on its own could summon up the riches of quite a lot. It's not unique in that, but it is unique in the fact that it has got Old Town, this huge city. Mark Sheets is saying, after the murder of Lord Beesbury, what about the loyalty of this house? So this is the interesting thing. This is that what they hinted at with Otto going down to the Reach is that they had kind of assumed that the Reach would all fall in line, but they haven't. And a lot of these laws in the book, they have to sort of go through these, you know, small battles down in the Reach, just to secure their own area before they can start marching up towards King's Landing. I don't know. Sounds like there's some people trolling in the chat. Do not worry, the moderators, I'm sure, are on this. The the Lawrence Gill Variety Channel, which I do not know, says, "Hi Robert, do you think Aegon the First should have made House Hightower Lords Paramount of the Reach and given House Tyrell Highgarden only? May have got the Faith Maesters and Old Town population more on board." Yeah, um, it's entirely possible that they could have done that. I think that they were wary of the High Towers. Aegon was wary of the High Towers. The situation was that there was House Gardner were the kings of the Reach, and House Gardner got destroyed during Aegon's invasion, and so Aegon had to decide who he was going to create as his new Lord Paramount of the Reach. Now, he had a few different options, but the two that we'll think about here, House Hightower and House Tyrell. Now, House Tyrell had been acting as stewards, so they were like the administrators already of the Reach, and they bent the knee to the Targaryens relatively quickly. House Hightower kind of held out for a bit. They were trying to work out what to do, and it took Visenya heading over on Vhagar for them to actually go, all right, we'll open the gates and say, yeah, we give in. It was very much under threat. So, who do you choose? Do you choose the people who, they bent the knee, but it was just when they thought they might get burned, and they're clearly very big and powerful already? Or do you choose the people who bent the knee nice and quickly, and people will respect them, but and you think you can probably trust them a bit more? Aegon's clear idea when setting up his new Lords Paramount, because we've already talked about the Tullys, also here with the Tyrells, and then with the Baratheons, all three of them were people that he thought he could trust over and above whether they were the most powerful house. That seemed to be quite low down on his list. Let's go to question from 444, saying, this is, hi Robert, hello. This season so far there are many contenders for the prize of the worst parenthood. There are indeed. Strong competitor is Daemon, who basically ignores his daughters. Another is Aegon II, who in some ways loved Jaehaerys but couldn't differentiate him from his twin sister or didn't even know his daily routines. The worst is Otto, who's not only uncaring for his daughter but doesn't care about his grandson's feelings, and then uses his great-grandson's death as a political opportunity. So there's the same reasons for Alicent. She can't comfort her children and uses the death of her grandson for propaganda. What is your insight here? I mean, I think you've sort of accurately summed up quite a lot of what's going on in this story. This is one of the themes here about the sins of the father are begotten upon the sons, and that is kind of where we're going here. You can clearly see the impact of the parental figures on the next generation down. Otto, how does Otto deal with Alicent? Well, he uses her as a political pawn, doesn't seem to show her a huge amount of love or care. How does Alicent then relate to her children? Well, it's pretty much the same. How do her children then relate to their children? And we see this passing down generation to generation to generation. So this is a clear theme that they've been trying to show. This is in the books, but they've been emphasizing it more in the show. In terms of who's the worst, I mean, I don't think you'll be well aware of my general dislike of just sort of doing these kind of ranking things, but I think that one thing is notable with Daemon is that they did take out a couple of scenes in season 1 where he was shown to be comforting his children. So for example, when Lena died, his second wife, when she died, on the show, what we saw was them all grieving, but there was a deleted scene where he went over and he hugged them and comforted them, and that wasn't there when it made the final cut. So was that a deliberate decision because they wanted to make him look like a less sympathetic father? It's possible, or it might just have been time constraints. Question from Stephanie B. Oh, that was the one we've already talked about Larys being a green seer. James Horner, kind of continuing this theme a bit about parentage, asking whether Otto or Alicent could have been abusive to Aegon because Aegon goes off to get drunk on his own, which apparently is a bit of a red flag. I do not know myself. But there is a family dynamic, James says, that is beyond dysfunctional. That scene where she just walks away from Aegon when he is so upset really got to me. I can't imagine walking away from any member of my family, friend, or even someone I just knew who was in that state. Yes, that was meant to be shocking, I think. And I think it was meant to show us where Alicent's mindset and feelings were at the time. We've never seen her being sort of close to Aegon, comforting him in any way. But I think at that point in particular, she was there dealing with her own thoughts and feelings and just could not cope with someone else's. So that's not me trying to be an apologist for her. I think that's me trying to explain what I thought they were trying to show in that scene. As for what you'll say about dysfunctional, absolutely. I think whether you call this abusive or emotionally abusive, whatever it is, clearly that family has not it is bad. Yeah, again, I don't think I'm qualified. I think I've said this a couple of times this season when people have asked these kind of more psychological kind of based questions. I don't think I'm qualified personally to talk about that. But what I can say is, yeah, I mean, red flags everywhere on this. Let's go to. I've got two more questions, I think, from my patrons. So I think we've got a bit of time. I try and do these pre-show live streams into about the 2-hour block, so we've got half an hour or so. But we've got a couple more questions from my patrons. Then I'll try and get through as much as I can in the chat. Catherine Furseth saying. Hi, Robert. It seems we'll get a lot of footage from Harrenhal today in episode 3. What are you most excited about, and what or who do you think we'll see? Right. So I've got a question about Alys Rivers next. So I'll talk about Alys Rivers there. In terms of what I see, I want to see more of Harrenhal as a very basic thing. We just seen bits of it here and there. From what we're given to understand, they created a whole massive Harrenhal set. And so I cannot wait to see that. In particular, the weirwood tree, which George R. R. Martin had a selfie when he visited the set. He had a selfie. He presumably could have taken the selfie anywhere, but he had a selfie in front of what looked like a weirwood tree in what looked like Harrenhal, which makes me think that that's going to be important, central. It certainly should be later in the story. And so I'm glad that it's appearing now. But the thing I'm most curious about is Sir Simon Strong, who is a character who I think only has 2 mentions in Fire and Blood. He is the Castellan of Harrenhal, which means that he is the person who's been left in charge. Technically, at the moment, the Lord of Harrenhal is Larys Strong, but he's not there. He's in King's Landing. So who's been left in charge for House Strong? And it's this guy called Sir Simon Strong. Now, he is the uncle, I think it is, of Lionel Strong, who was Larys's dad. Now, we're told in the book he's quite old, and in the book, basically, all that happens is that he sees Daemon landing on Caraxes and thinks, okay, well, we can't defend that. We've not got many soldiers. This is a dragon. The castle is yours. So that's what happened in the book. And then a bit later, Aemond comes in and kills everyone, apart from Alys Rivers. And this includes Simon Strong. And that's pretty much what we hear about him. So quite a small role. But they have cast a guy called Simon Russell Beale there, who is probably not a name that many people know, but he is a very venerable British actor of the stage mostly. He has done a few TV and film things, but nothing massive. and he is incredibly uh, well decorated for his stage work. He's won several Olivier Awards, which is the top theatre award in London. He's also won a Tony Award when he went over to America and did a play. He's won BAFTA awards, lots of different awards for his stage acting, and he's also been knighted, so he's technically Sir Simon, um, playing Sir Simon. Now, I find this fascinating because he is a real heavyweight actor who you don't hire for just like what I described as Simon Strong's role in the story. So they are going to build this up, which I think is fascinating because his character is clearly going to be important. But that means that we're going to have more scenes in Harrenhal because he's not about to sort of go out, and he's as an old man, he's not going to sort of go out and do lots of fighting and things himself. So what we will see is a lot more interaction between him and Damon, him and Aemond, Alys Rivers, whoever. Um, so I'm fascinated to see the performance, but also fascinated to see what does this mean for the way that they're going to frame this. And I think they're going to frame this as Harrenhal being really central to the plot. Um, Jordan, just complete digression. Jordan Vicario saying another thing I've been wondering about this community. If any of you watch Hello Future Me, and if you'd enjoy a video of Tim and Rob, well, I do know Tim. I've never met Tim. Hello Future Me. If you've never come across the channel, fantastic channel. Does cover some of the sort of TV shows and books that we cover here, but also he's very into writing, and there's a lot of writing theory videos that he does. He's excellent. I've never met him personally, but I've corresponded with him a few times, and he comes across as an excellent human being. So yeah, do go and check out Hello Future Me. Let's have a quick look in the chat. Mark Sheesa saying the actor for the former Kingsguard Commander Westerling was also quite well known, but doesn't seem like he will reprise his role. Yeah, so that was Graham McTavish, who is, um, I mean, I would put him in a slightly different category in that he is a well-known actor. And he's a very good actor in that he's done a lot of. So he appeared in The Witcher. He appeared in the Hobbit movies. He's done a lot of things along those lines. So he's certainly well known. But the differences between doing somebody who's slightly well known and the equivalent to when they cast Diana Rigg in Game of Thrones. Diana Rigg had indeed done some TV and some film, but she was best known as being a great stage actress. And they hired her because they knew that she would be absolutely bossing every scene that she was in. And she definitely did, as Elena Tyrell. And this, for me, is that kind of caliber of casting. They've gone for somebody who is not particularly well known, unlike Graham McTavish, who is very well known for doing this kind of thing, who's not particularly well known, but is very highly regarded as an actor. So they're slightly different things. Let's have a quick flick through. Northern Tommy talked about Paddy Considine being snubbed from House of the Dragon and whether others will be recognised. I do have, I mean, if you'll forgive the slight digression, as to I have a conspiracy theory as to why Paddy Considine didn't get even a nomination for what he did in Viserys, in playing Viserys, which is that when they give out the what are they called, screeners to the industry people in advance of a TV show coming out so that they can do all these reviews of it, then they tend to send out the first few episodes of the show. They don't send the last few because they don't want the endings to be spoiled for anyone. So I think I'm right in saying for House of the Dragon, they sent out the first 6 episodes And to the people who ultimately would be on many of these kind of awards panels, the people who would be deciding on who should be nominated for stuff, and or at least writing the reviews on which other people would be basing some of their opinions on. Paddy Considine, I thought, was excellent all the way through, but completely shone. And you'll remember the episode as well as I do on episode 8. So my conspiracy theory is that the reason why he didn't get as much recognition was that the pinnacle of what he did was later on in the season, and a lot of the reviewers didn't actually get that far. But just a conspiracy theory. I think that there's a fair chance, just based purely on the first 2 episodes of this season, I would be surprised if Emma Darcy doesn't get any recognition this time round. This is, I think they did a fantastic couple of episodes already, and they're clearly framing this around Rhaenyra being one of the, as she should obviously be, one of the central characters of the show. Andrew Kay saying it's a travesty regardless, one of the best ever acting performances in a fantasy setting. I would agree with you completely. I thought he was outstanding. Let's go to a question. I said I'd got one question on Alys Rivers, which is a great question from my patrons, to end on Emma Shyman saying, "Hi, Robert. I'm hoping we'll get an introduction to Alys Rivers tonight. I'm wondering what your take on her character is based on Fire and Blood. Is she a magic user? Did she have relationships with both Daemon and Aemond? Was she pregnant? Was there anything magical about the pregnancy? And if your thoughts or expectations have changed based on the new character details we've gotten on the show." Okay, so Alys Rivers, we've talked about her briefly a couple of times already, but let's actually look at what it says in Fire and Blood about her. So she gets a proper introduction. So I will read this out. Who was this woman? And remember, this is written by the Maesters. Who was this woman, Alys Rivers? A serving wench who dabbled in potions and spells, says Munkin. A woods witch, claims Septon Eustace. A malign enchantress who bathed in the blood of virgins to preserve her youth, Mushroom would have us believe. Her name suggests bastard birth, but we know little of her father and less of her mother. Munkin and Eustace tell us she was sired by Lord Lionel Strong in his callow youth, making her a natural half-sister to his sons Harwin and Larys. But Mushroom insists she was much older, that she was a wet nurse to both boys, perhaps even to their father a generation earlier. Was she in truth a witch who lay with demons, bringing forth dead children as payment for the knowledge they gave her? Was she a simple-minded slattern, as Eustace believes, a wanton who used her poisons and potions to bind men to her, body and soul? Alys Rivers was at least 40 years of age during the Dance of the Dragons. That much is known. Mushroom makes her even older. All agree that she looked younger than her years, but whether this was simple happenstance or achieved through her practice of dark arts, men continue to dispute. So that's the description we have of her, and I think there are a few things from in the book, and there are a few things that we can draw out. The first one is the fact that no one, even these 3 main sources, Munkin, Eustace, and Mushroom, they all agree she was a magic user of some kind. Whether Munkin dabbling in potions and spells, Eustace claiming a woods witch, Mushroom a malign enchantress. So the idea that she had some kind of magical thing going on is pretty much agreed. And I would be shocked if they don't go down that route in the show. The second thing is that you can tell, as I've said, this is very much the Maesters who are doing this. The second thing is you can tell just the language. It's really laying into her. There's nothing here that's even remotely neutral about this. If you just sort of read the words. we've got a witch who lay with demons, bringing forth dead people, dead children, simple-minded slattern, a wanton. Um, what else did they sort of say? Practicing dark arts, malign enchantress. Just in this one paragraph, we get so much language which is directed, which is trying to make us not like her, which immediately should be making us go, oh, so maybe there's another layer underneath this, and that we never see in Fire and Blood. It's worth pointing out that in Fire and Blood, her story doesn't end. We don't get to see what happens afterwards. Basically, at the end of all of this, she appears on the walls of Harrenhal. She's been ordered to hand it over, but she's still there. She's survived, and she claims that she has got Aemon's child. And when who she says is the rightful king of the Seven Kingdoms, and then the people sent to get her die magically, perhaps. And this is just left hanging in at the end of Fire and Blood. There are a couple of these things where the story sort of ends at a reasonable point. Aegon III has come into his inheritance and he's king, so you can draw a line there. But history doesn't just stop and then start again with a completely new cast of characters. For Fire and Blood Part 2, should we ever see that, this would carry on. Alys Rivers' story would carry on. And basically, we're just left with this kind of, and what happens to Alys Rivers? Well, find out next book. So it's left mysterious. So we don't know what happens with her after this. In terms of what we've been told about the character, so the actress who has been cast has said, my particular storyline is quite, for the moment, contained. Contained, let's say, very wild, but contained. I've always been given the opportunity to play people who are pretty prophetic, which is cool, but it's a lot of pressure. I want to really ground her and find her humanity. I always try to find my way into that, but she has a lot of power too. So I think on this we can say the keywords here is a contained storyline, but also a powerful character is what we're going to be seeing. So I think they will show her, they will show her magic, but we're not going to get a detailed look at her, who she is, her background. They're going to try and keep that quite enigmatic. Saying the storyline is contained means that this isn't going to be a huge role. She will appear, she will be mysterious. I'm sure we'll talk about her way in excess of the amount of screen time she has, but this isn't going to be massive. So that's my general feelings, and what I hope is that we get a build-up of her character through seasons 2 and 3. Maybe they will let it drop afterwards because it's really at the end of the war that we see what's going on with her afterwards. I'll be intrigued to see whether they go through the whole pregnancy route, because if so, that is a storyline which has to carry on beyond the end of the Dance of the Dragons. So let's go and have a quick look through the chat. Northern Tommy saying, Alys Rivers, we've been discussing her for over 4 minutes, and I'm still scrolling back to determine if this is who we're talking about. It's who I'm talking about. Agree. Weirwood saying, Alys Rivers weighs as much as a duck. Yeah. Carl Carsnock saying, sounds like folks leave you alone when you attain proper witch status, which sounds kind of awesome, to be honest. Yeah, I don't know whether they left her alone, but she was certainly a survivor. Tom Bombadil saying, is it possible the visions some of the characters are having may come from Raven? If you're talking about Bloodraven, I always want to blame Bloodraven for these things. He's not yet born, which doesn't rule him out completely, because, of course, as we know, the Weirwood network exists or doesn't view time in the same way that we do. But Bloodraven certainly in the books is very much of the opinion you cannot change the past. So I tend to the view that Bloodraven himself is not intervening in events which happen in the Dance of the Dragons. He will intervene in events hugely after, from the Dunk and Egg stories onwards. Uh, Jordan Vicarious saying, what I've enjoyed about Rhaenyra and Alicent on the show is that it demonstrates how history remembers women. The show as a whole has humanized characters I otherwise really did not like. Well, yeah, this is definitely one of the big things which has come out with House of the Dragon is this humanizing of characters, is this trying to show some characters that we actively didn't like. They are trying to show us other sides. Even characters like Otto and Alicent, who book readers really, really disliked. What they have done on the flip side is someone, Larys Strong, was a very mysterious character we didn't know huge amounts about, and they've pushed us to really disliking him. Aegon, we still really dislike, but I think, particularly after what we've seen in the first couple of episodes, we do feel a little bit more empathy, understanding of why he is like that. We look at how he was brought up, and we see what's happened to him. We kind of understand it a little bit more. So yeah, there's a lot of different characters that the show have tried to show us another side to. The downside, I think, is that they've tried to take away a little bit of the bad people doing bad things kind of volition that we have for some characters. A lot of the events that happen in Fire and Blood, which very much came across as being these are bad deeds. We're often on the show, we're given a different angle to make it look like actually this was more accident, or this is just a misunderstanding. Like when Aemond on Vhagar killed Lucerys, that was a pure lack of control. It was dragons out of control. Accident is probably going too far, but certainly wasn't Aemond deliberately trying to do that. Alicent putting or believing that Aegon should be on the throne is because there was a misunderstanding. This kind of thing is all the way through House of the Dragon. So it has taken away a little bit of the volition of some of the characters, but it has softened them and shown us another layer to them. Andrew K saying, need to see telekinetic head exploding / strangulation. Yeah, this is what's reported that Alys Rivers did towards the end of the book. Whether we would see that, that's almost beyond the scope of time-wise of what we might be expecting from House of the Dragon, but it's definitely there. Constantine Tranos, can you ever see Larys being torn by war and decide to promote peace in the show? Yeah, so this is interesting. So in the book, it's never really sort of said like this, but it becomes clear that towards the end of this war, a group of people start to come together and go, we have to end this. It just can't carry on. The madness has just gone too far, and they do succeed. They manage to stop, in particular, Cregan Stark, who was going to just carry on attacking people for a long time. They managed to stop him. This group of people who got together includes people like Larys. Now, could we see Larys do that on the show? Do that? It's not at the moment, no. But as I say, Larys is one of the few characters we haven't seen the other side of. We've seen the bad side, the manipulative side. We haven't yet seen something to soften the character, which has happened to almost all the other characters. So maybe later in the season we will get that. And Michelle Reimer saying it's why we need the Regency to be covered. Yes, we do. I would love the Regency to be covered. Uh, I, I mean, we sometimes get hints that maybe they're going to go beyond 4 seasons into 5, but um, I think next up is going to be Aegon the Conqueror. Cross Ballerina saying the man killed his family. I don't think the show Larys cares about people's deaths. Yeah, they made that very clear that that was him in the book. I thought that there was an equal chance that could well have been Daemon. It certainly worked in his favour quite a bit. Have a flick through. I think that's probably it in the chat. So what we will do is just quickly say what's coming up. So I've got a few videos. I've got my breakdown video is going to be coming up over on my main channel within 24 hours of the TV show airing. So we've got that. I will have 1 or 2 other lore videos coming out during the week, as well as another Tolkien breakdown video. What was it? It was one I quite enjoyed writing this one. Oh yeah, is the One Ring sentient? If you're a Tolkien fan, this is a question which comes up a lot. The One Ring, does it have a personality of its own? Is it like a character, or is it just a thing? So where is it on that? Is the One Ring sentient? That will be coming out hopefully this Friday. But these live streams will be back. I'll do my open Q&A again on Thursday, and I'll be doing another one of these at the same time next week. Last thing to say is 2 or 3 things to say is, first of all, if you've enjoyed the live stream and if you meant to donate, you still can. It stays open now, and it will stay open after I've finished talking. So do not worry about that. You can donate at the moment, even after I've finished. So please, if you're feeling generous, please do that. Secondly, moderators, thank you. Fantastic work as always. I hugely appreciate what you do. If you've not shown them any love in the chat, please do that. And then also patrons, I hugely appreciate your support. That's how I can do what I do. So thank you very much. So I think that's it. Enjoy episode 3, everybody. I will, as Joe Magician, I think is still in the chat, I will direct everybody to go to Joe Magician's post-show live stream, which I believe you're doing them, Matt. And I will see everybody on the other side. Take care.